And we are live. Welcome, people, folks, peeps, to SEO news for week 28. That was last week. So we've gathered all the news and we're going to go through them here. My name is Frederick Drost. We've got Linus, and we both work for Precies. Yeah, let's just jump right into it. So the first thing I have here is, again, I love SearchPilot. I love their content marketing strategy. They're doing really cool case studies. And here is a compendium of all their search visibility tests. Again, one of them that stood out to me was when you have content in accordions and you just expand them instead of having them hidden, it increased traffic. Again, these are just great case studies for going in if you're kind of stuck with some websites and you don't know where to, how to get more traffic. Perhaps these can help you define tests. Then you do those tests, and then you see the results, and then you adapt your strategy, right? So that's what I like about these. Not necessarily that these are just pure facts, and it leads into the next one really well. And I didn't even like the title of this article. So SEO rockstar proves that you don't need meta descriptions. First of all, what's an SEO rockstar? Who knows? But the article is very interesting because it goes into, well, we did some tests and it showed this. And then the next part of the article is someone being skeptical about it. And I feel like that's a great discussion to have as well. If we see a case study on a specific thing, like now having no meta descriptions, I need to understand why it is they increased in traffic. Is it because Google is better at rewriting them now than they've ever been? And Google actually does a great job at doing that. And it does it more if there is no meta description. That would be a good logical, like, okay, well, that makes sense. Does it work for every niche? Right? So these are things you should probably test. And I think it's good to be skeptical about these cases. And I'm just afraid that people will just go, okay, let's just delete all of them and see what happens. So always do like kind of these A/B tests or group tests on your own clients or websites before doing all of this stuff. If you want to be a rock star.
I mean, and I feel like that goes without saying for everything. We don't know anything for sure. Like all of our work is guesswork at the end.
Yeah.
And we can have pretty strong hypotheses about stuff, but in the end, it's always guesswork. So if you're doing things site-wide and you haven't tested it out, then you're inviting yourself to have trouble.
Yeah, there are things where I think it's worth doing site-wide, and then because you can quickly revert them, like programmatically adding a call to action to all your titles because they're all really short. Like it's like if you have all your categories and it just says the product name, like the H1 or something, you might go, well, why don't we just add a bit of CTAs? I tell people to do that site-wide, but I also follow along. I don't just wait and see what happens. But I rarely see a case where that negatively affects CTR. So in some cases, I'm basically explaining experience.
Yes. I mean, and here as well, like this is the exception that confirms the rule kind of as well. Like in general, you should not test, you should always test things, but sometimes you don't have to because generally it works.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Next up, Insights. It's a new tab that's going to showcase the performance audit from PageSpeed Insights. So it's going to replace the Insights. The performance audit is what it's called now, and it's going to be replaced by something called Insights. I tried both of them out, and they look pretty good. I feel like they're a bit more narrowed in. They're a bit more specific. I think the other one is still this is really a really good audit. I keep telling people this is well documented. It's quite a good test. And again, Google has great incentive to make websites load faster because then they cost them much less to crawl the web. So yeah, I kind of like that relationship. So you can go into the current, Lighthouse is the audit, but the PageSpeed Insights test, you'll see the Corbett Vitals, you'll get the performance test and the audit. Go and look, you can actually see the difference between both the tabs now, so it's really interesting. And then there is a recent similar web study coming out. So people are mentioning different aspects and different data sets, and one of them is, of course, that zero clicks searches have grown since. And again, it kind of goes against... Yeah, it goes against... I think Google is like, no, but the traffic is more quality, and that's Again, some people have shown that it is, some people have shown that it isn't. But overall, there is this great decoupling, as people are talking about, and we're getting less clicks. Sometimes I see impressions going up, but again, for me, that the impressions, when you look at an AI overview, with it has maybe like 5 points. Each point has a source, and that source has 5 different sources. So we're expect that if that counts as an impression, you're getting a lot of bad impressions suddenly, because who is actually looking at all these sources, clicking, yeah, oh, I did it, and I was already irritated by that process, and I actually had to do it for my job. So I don't think those impressions actually matter that much. So I'm just a bit skeptical. And then another study here from Systrix, and it looks like organic search winners are also winners in AI mode. Cue the surprised. Cue the
Yeah,
surprised.
exactly.
What? Again, it would be so weird if it was completely opposite, because Google has tried at least to nail in what is quality, what is authority, what is EAT, all these aspects to creating good results, and even adding user metrics to the bunch. And if AI mode suddenly flips that script to say, well, have you been doing a poor job the entire time? So they have to kind of connect it. I feel like that's the power of Google, is that they can connect their search algorithm to AI. So I'm not surprised, and I think this is why. Let's just remind everyone again: Geo AEO is 90% good SEO. It's long term. It's not quick. There's no quick way of getting into AIs. I mean, you could spam them, but AIs will figure a way around that when they start seeing a lot of it. Here is an interesting one. Cloudflare has kind of shook up the industry recently here, which powers about 20% of the internet. Did not know that. Apparently, it's now blocking AI crawlers by default on all new sites using its platform. I have a hard time verifying that a little bit, because their blog posts doesn't necessarily suggest it is by default, but that you have to opt into it. So I'm a little bit skeptical on that information.
I,
But
th-
overall, what we
I think this was just jump in. Sorry. I think what this was that you have to opt in if you already have, like, if you're already hosted on Cloudflare. But if you set up a new site through Cloudflare, then it's automatically on.
that's probably the distinction I was missing. So thank you for that. Again, to simplify things, if you have a client using Cloudflare, or if you're using it, figure it out, because now you have to figure out, well, do we want to block AI crawlers? Maybe you're relying a lot on AI traffic recently. I know I have a few clients, it's just exploded. If they're using Cloudflare, I would not like to block them. And I don't think they care about being cited, because a lot of times those citations are not like training data. It's actually like, hey, booking this or doing something important. It's very much transactional. So it would be stupid for them to block. So have a conversation, ask your clients, do they use Cloudflare? I use Wapalizer. You can see technologies being used as well. It's a plugin in Chrome, and overall have that conversation with them. With publishers, it becomes more interesting in terms of monetization, but for other types of companies, it's a bit more of a nuanced discussion to have. So, yeah, have a look into the blog post. But very interesting, and I think it could be the future of how AI communicates with the internet. People are just complaining that, well, you're summarizing 20 articles that are really good into some boring generic stuff to answer questions, so that's great. But where's my cut? Why should I make more unique content just so nobody reads it? And here is a way of kind of getting around that, whether it's for training data, which they're actually like they're communicating with AIs in terms of, is it training data fetching? Is it live fetching? So there'll be all this sort of documentation and standardization like robots.txt that will come out in the next few years. And of course, me and Linus and the rest of Precis will be on top of that. Don't you worry. But yeah, yeah, we discussed this before. It is definitely going to be how to solve the issue here, I think.
I think this is really the way forward, and it also, I think, is a pretty good business model for, like, if you have an informational website. I think this is what you want, because then you're not really relying on clicks either, but you're relying on, like, LLMs wanting to surface your content.
Yep.
So I think makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and for big players like Reddit, they can block it at server level and then they can start a discussion. But for smaller companies, they now have a tool And I just a great marketing ploy, I think, as well from, I guess, Cloudflare. I mean, if you're the first one out to say this, that's just great. You're taking a stance, and I think that's important. So I moved for people watching the video, I moved the last piece of news up because it actually is a great segue. That independent publishers have filed an EU antitrust complaint against Google, accusing it of abusing its dominant search position through its AI overviews feature. Now, I tweeted this, I called this, I said there will be lawsuits, 100%. People are now, if you lose 30%, 50, 60% of your clicks, and the answer is just being generated, I feel like there's some sort of law that should protect against that somewhere. And I also have the feeling that the danger for me is if you're tired of it and just say I block AI, you can technically block them, but then you still lose that tiny visibility you have left, and your competitors are taking that. But if all of them decide to block, then AI overviews just become sourceless, or it becomes poor in quality. So I don't know. We'll see how this goes. This complaint here, but I mean, Google of course defends AI overviews, but when have they ever not defended a product they launched?
I think AIOs are great. Like from a user perspective, I think they're very, very good. I think like if we tie back to the earlier thing about Cloudflare, if we think that the way forward for LLMs to work in search is that they have to pay to be able to crawl, then I think as well it probably goes the other way around, that maybe they, because this is something Sam Altman spoke about as well, I think a month or two back, maybe even three, about how he doesn't really believe in the ad model. Like he'd instead want affiliate kickback. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that also might make sense then. Like if Google or OpenAI has to pay to crawl your website, then if through them you make a sale, they should also get a kickback
Yeah,
back.
yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, yeah. Well, they'll probably set that up too. Don't worry, it'll come. Holy moly! Once you start integrating affiliate networks and stuff like that into the game, yeah, it's going to be a mess. But I feel like AI overviews is I'm with you in that it's not necessarily bad. I just think they need to be better at attributing. And
Yes.
if you give a complex, relatively long answer with like let's say 6, 7 points, um, well, each point has a source. And I feel like there is just too many sources and they're not being attributed well enough. And give me the top 3 or 4 articles, show them prominently and where the answers are based off. You're allowed to synthesize, but they're not, we're just not showing the brand name. They should be like the featured image. Show them prominently and just use 4 and don't use too many different ones. And the attribution is the bad part here. And I think that may be what they're going to target here. I know EU is really fast on these types of things, so very curious to see how this goes. I know Italy didn't like AI; they blocked AI overviews for a while. It was illegal there. So yeah, we'll see. I'll follow along with this. And Google is still part of an antitrust trial in the U.S. as well. So there's a bunch of things going on with Google. A lot of uncertainty. But I'm still kind of for that you're allowed to complain and that people are taking it seriously if they actually have the numbers to prove it's not benefiting them. Then someone on Twitter built a Movera-inspired custom JavaScript snippet for Screaming Frog. And if you remember last week, if you watched that video, which you should, we talked about Movera and being Google's new search. I'm not sure if it's algorithm, but almost like a feature that is apparently can do it faster and better. And it's using embeddings, vectorizing like chunks of content. So he's kind of doing that. And instead of speeding up search, he tries to look for optimizing the content for better retrieval. So that's what he's doing there. So it's pretty interesting. And also a good reminder that Marie Haynes had a great article last week, I think, around not over optimizing for just vector and embeddings, and you lose touch of like what users want. So always have the UX and the user in mind. But I'm gonna try this and see what comes out and test as we've discussed today. That's the way to go. Oh yeah, and June, July core update. Some volatility starting to be felt, and the comments are pretty. Some people are seeing more traffic, but a lot of people are also just like complaining that they are, they were on page one and now they're on page nobody. And that volatility seems weird that if Google is putting you like position 4 and then suddenly in position 30, it seems like you don't know really what is good. Like I can see the volatility moving a little bit up and down and some people switching pages, but those drastic drops just seem like it might come back to normal. It just feels weird that there would be such a drastic drop from quality. But we'll keep you posted. There's not a lot more insights here, but I know some smarter people than us will post them and we will share them here. And then Andrew Charlton, who's a really good follow on Twitter, he's reminding us to check that if you've lost traffic through or because of AI overviews, was it even valuable? And I think a lot of those, like, maybe it wasn't really converting, and I think it's worth checking. And he's got a really cool checklist, one of the more simpler ones I've seen about, well, first of all, the sky isn't falling, we're not dying here, SEO isn't dead, but also what's really changing, how can we adapt to this, and is it easier to get featured in AI overviews? And even though it's a smaller pool of attention, is it worth focusing on for smaller brands versus big brands, et cetera, et cetera? So just like, he's a really good follow, and I think he's got the way he treats this is good, instead of panicking and selling snake oil. Let's see here, and finally, this one you might be interested in: how to rank in AIO reviews locally. So 40% of local searches, that's a lot. You worked a little bit with some local SEO. You have some clients.
Slightly,
Yeah.
but mostly working on building out the service offering itself.
Yep.
So not the most well-versed local SEO person, but I think some good insights in here. But I mean, it also kind of boils down to if you do good SEO, then it'll do well for you.
Yeah. 90% SEO is good AEO.
Yeah.
I really like. Well, I have a client, and they actually have a lot of local keywords, but it's all like hairdressers in this city, hairdressers in here, and AI overviews is not appearing for those. And they do mention that here, that it's often like what, how, why, when queries.
Mm.
So again, informational but local, where to go and this and that. And I feel like some of those results are local, but they're not that local. Like it's still
Mm.
TripAdvisor ranking for some things like that, and so they're the ones who have to worry a little bit about that. But yeah, interesting read.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
and that is it for today's news. So not too much stuff here. Hopefully next week we'll have some more core update insights, and I'll keep you posted, of course, on all these lawsuits that are related to AI. It does affect our industry. Remember, talk to your clients if they have Cloudflare, and otherwise, subscribe. These comes out weekly, and have a lovely day. And I will see all of you next week.
Ciao, ciao.